So welcome to ISB, Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal. So he is a leading economist, writer, and historian, and you're also the member of PM's Economic Advisory Council. We are absolutely, grateful to have you and have this conversation with you. So thank you for sparing out the time.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's a great campus, and thanks for having me here again.
Perfect. So, Mr. Sanjal, jumping right into it, let's start with talking about maybe manufacturing a bit, right? So, manufacturing is something that has not been as much of a leading sector in our country. Services has been the more leading sector, but there's been a lot of political focus on this ever since this the Modi government came into being. So, how do you see this evolving, and what do you think we need to do more to have manufacturing sector play a bigger role in the economy?
So, first of all, I want to make one thing clear that manufacturing has still been growing. It's just not been growing faster than GDP. But its share of GDP has by and large been flattish. But it's flat in a growing economy. So, manufacturing too is growing. Yeah, just putting it there because many people don't understand this. Nonetheless, it is true that manufacturing hasn't had the sort of China type big leap. And so we do need to see that kind of growth. There are some economists who say that it's not needed, maybe, although I know Raghu has changed his view. But I think the fact is that a country our size does need to have all cylinders firing, and manufacturing has got to be an important part of that. For several reasons. One is not everybody is going to write software or become a chef or something. There are a large number of people who are suited for manufacturing type jobs. So I think they should have an option of making their careers there. There are lots of people needed there. So that's one reason. Secondly, there's another reason. You see, it's all very well to say everybody should be getting into services and all those kinds of things. But I am a firm believer that eventually, if you are not building the things, you will ultimately lose muscle memory. So even if you happen to be doing designs for chips, if you are not actually making chips ever, I'm not saying you have to be the only guy making chips or the world leader, but even to have some capability of doing it, because only then will you really get into the really cutting edge part of chip design. So even if you want to do chip design, you need to do some part of manufacturing. In any case, there's also geostrategic reasons. I mean, you don't know for what reason supply chains in the world will shut down. It could be a pandemic, it could be a war, it could be any other reason. So for all these reasons, a country our size needs to have a sizable manufacturing sector. And so I am a big believer that we need to support it. Now the question then is, how do you support it?
Correct.
So we do live in a world where China is a dominant player. It's competitive across the entire supply chain. There are some odd areas where India can hold its own, but in general, China is a formidable manufacturing hub. So we have left with no choice but to provide certain kinds of targeted support. We can't do it for everybody, but targeted support for certain. So you can use, some places we use tariffs. But more recently, we have been using something called production links incentives, where you have allowed for bulking up of certain sectors, and it has worked in some areas. It has worked in electronics, maybe in certain parts of pharmaceuticals and one or two other areas. It's not been a great success as far as I can tell, say in textiles.
Correct.
But it's worked in some places. So, point is that we need to provide support to manufacturing, and it needs to be done in various ways, whether finding ways of inserting ourselves into the global supply chain, or finding ways of encouraging it domestic manufacturing. Whatever it is, you have to give it some support.
And within manufacturing, I think one of the things that we have focused globally on is sustainability and how do we evolve for the greener economies, right? But we have we are now producing a lot of electricity using solar, but our solar panels are still being imported.
So one thing I have to be clear about is that India is a hydrocarbons poor country. So even if there was no climate change, sustainability was not an issue. Just from purely economic reasons, we should be manufacturing as much as possible from other sources other than burning some fossil fuel. Now, since we don't want to import so much fossil fuel, we want to do it. It turns out that we are not given a lot of fossil fuel, but we do have lots of sunshine, and we get that sunshine in about the same time that we have a spike in
that electricity demand.
Electricity demand, which is basically in summer. So it's good that way it sets. Now the question is obviously how do you convert that sunshine into electricity? So yes, it is true that China is massively subsidizing its panel making, but you see, you have to be very careful here. One could argue that if we are going to use so much of solar, we should manufacture it all here. But in fact, it is a lot cheaper to buy it from there. Okay, so in fact, if you want to do this transition, you can make the case that you do it entirely with subsidy. In fact, one could argue that the Chinese are subsidizing our transition. Why are you complaining? So you have to take both sides of it. On the other hand, you can also argue that, look, if you're going to have so much of it is going to be solar and you're dependent on some other guy to produce it, then all you have done is exchanged Saudi Arabia with China. But some balanced view of the matter has to be taken, therefore. We do need to create our own capacities, but those capacities will have to be supported. We cannot provide infinite support, so we'll provide some amount of support. But I think in many areas you will continue to import things.
And I think the underlying point that you're saying here is also we need to find our own position, and we need to have our own sort of way out of what do we want to balance.
And most of those are not corner solutions.
Yeah.
Most of them is some muddling along in the middle.
Yeah.
And people love these neat corner solutions. But in fact, the circumstances I find myself in any point in time are usually some trade-off is made. And it's a messy trade-off because I have to keep the engine running. You see, I cannot fix the engine, shut it down and fix the engine and then opt for an optimal path. I have to keep this engine running in the messiness of the path I'm in. And so you end up with these things that we are both subsidizing Indian solar or not just solar, green hydrogen, many other things. But at the same time, we are importing.
Right. So actually, that is what I think we as a nation focusing on to control our own narrative and our own policies, right? And we hosted G20 last year. We were recognized as one of the leaders of Global South. So where do you see our strategic autonomy being balanced vis-a-vis the narratives that play with respect to the country, with respect to India, around the world?
So look, we will shortly be in a 2-3 years time the world's third largest economy. We are already the world's most populous country. There are many spheres where we are now pulling our weight. We hadn't historically, but say providing maritime security in the Indian Ocean region, we are providing a large part of it today. We weren't a few years ago. So point is that we have now arrived on the stage. And as we sort of expand and grow, other people will also, fear. You can even say, they will fear us also in some ways. And so do not think that therefore, this space will be ceded. Okay. So yes, we have historical problems with China, but we also trade with them. But even the West, with whom we have better relations, don't think that they will cede space with, just like that. You have seen recently, for example, the whole issue, that problem we had with Canada. You will see that there will be a systematic narrative in global media that India is not a proper democracy. Everybody is hungry here and unhappy here. Every index in the world, we are at the bottom number. This is something exactly what you should expect to happen during these transitions, because the institutions that are threatened by this will respond by being, and they have no problem being unfair. Right? They have no problem. So you'll have this entire collection of NGOs, think tanks, who will continuously try to undermine us. And by the way, they have been doing this for a long time. One of the reasons we were unable to rise is because they had already compartmentalized us and infiltrated us at multiple levels.
Right.
Right. Many of the policies we make in all kinds of areas are every effort is made to influence us in various ways. I mean, whether it's buy a certain kind of vaccine during the COVID crisis, right? So every effort was made. Same thing is done with all kinds of, whether it's our pharmaceutical policies or, and they're all done with all kinds of high-minded things, environment, social and governance norms and things like that. So they all sound very high-minded, but in fact, a very large proportion of this manipulation is done by essentially infiltrating our decision-making systems using various kinds of institutions, particularly international charities and NGOs. And I'll even tell you what the core pathway for this is. A very large proportion of the children of our elite end up working for these institutions.
Right.
Now, many of them may not be even aware of that they are utilized for this purpose, but many of them are and are fully signed up members of this. In fact, if you've had the opportunity of studying in US or UK universities, there is an entire coterie of people of Indian origin, Indian citizens also, who are students there, who will be the biggest critics of anything in India.
Right.
What are they doing? They are basically signaling to those organizations that we are willing to be a party to your agenda. Right. Please hire me. यही तो करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं.
Yeah. But so, absolutely, and I think, while there is this section, the way I see this is that section is sort of decreasing a little, and there is a bigger section that is rising, which sees how Bharat or India, had immense cultural value or had immense,
No, of course. Yeah. So, both of these things are true.
Yeah.
So, there is an emergent India. There are people who have signed up for it and are feeling very happy about it. And there is people who are feeling uncomfortable with it, particularly members of the old elite.
Yeah.
And so many of these members of the old elite so you have to remember, you are too young to remember this, but I remember it. You went back to the 80s and 90s when I was growing up. Who were the people who had, fancy cars? I'm not talking about the businessmen, but exclude the very big business. Who had all, went abroad. The first time I got into an aircraft to fly anyone when I got a Rhodes scholarship at age 22 to go to Oxford. But these people were going to conferences as undergraduates.
Right.
क्यों जा रहे भाई? ये सब वही ये फाउंडेशन ने किया, वो फाउंडेशन ने दिया, यही सब कर रहे थे.
Right.
तो कैसे मिला इन लोगों को? तो ये एक इकोसिस्टम बना था.
Yeah. So, but within the country as well, like especially within the youth, which is like in their 20s or early 30s right now, I think they are taking up a lot more risk and a lot more
Absolutely.
confidence on India.
Yes.
Right, and they are trying to do a lot for India, in India, and by Indians. Right. So, how do you see this risk appetite, which is exploding? Sort of.
So this is absolutely true. That this change in attitude is the thing that drove, and I keep saying, politics and economics and business are ultimately downstream of culture. And so culture is, what is the cultural change that we are seeing right now? It is a change in our attitudes towards risk, attitude towards innovation, attitude towards failure. So it is still the case that a very large number of people will still do their UPSC exam and try for the, run-of-the-mill thing. But there is now a large number of kids, particularly in IITs, IIMs or ISB, where this culture has clearly changed. I mean, you visit any of these institutions over 20 years, I have seen it myself, a very large number of people want to do all kinds of things. And this is fantastic because this is what triggers a renaissance. So, this risk-taking shift is not something unique to India. This risk-taking shift happened in the Renaissance back in Europe as well. So, you see within a few generations, you see Galileo, Michelangelo, Da Vinci. These are all living in small towns in northern Italy. Many of them know each other or rivals of each other, and they begin to dramatic innovations in all kinds of different fields. So you have Florence and Venice. Today we remember it for the beautiful cathedrals, etc. they built, architecture. But in fact, their contribution is totally different. I mean, Florence's contribution to the world is double entry bookkeeping, and Venice's contribution is equity markets. Right? Same thing happens now in northern Europe a few decades later. So you have Francis Drake, famous captain, sailed around the world. He then defeated the Spanish Armada, did all these cool things, but he also firsthand would have listened to Shakespeare perform his plays. They're from the same generation and probably even knew each other. So why am I telling you all of this is that something switches and a place which is not doing very much suddenly begins to do all kinds of things. So I'm feeling that thing happening here in India all of a sudden. And that leads to all kinds of risk taking. So let's take architecture. Okay, you look at the amazing amount of interesting architecture that happened in pre-independence India. Okay, beautiful buildings, the British built, the Indian Maharajas built, all kinds of people. Independence happens, we build nothing very much. Okay, except for that one Vidhan Sauda building in Bangalore. I can't think of any really good-looking public building that was built in India after independence till very recently. If you go to Chandigarh, we are told, you go and look at the Secretariat was built by Le Corbusier. I'm sorry, it's one of the ugliest buildings ever built. Okay, it's terrible. So, what happened in those 75 odd years? Why didn't we build anything? Because we just, the same socialist mindset which wouldn't allow us to take risks in business wouldn't allow us also to take risks in architecture.
Right.
Right, same breakdown.
So are we placed to take risk in AI? Because that is sort of the emerging sector right now.
Absolutely, not just AI, there are a huge number of new sectors that are emerging. And I personally think we should embrace it. Now, this is not because I don't think AI will cause all kinds of problems. Okay? It does need to be regulated, so don't take it. My enthusiasm for AI is not driven by my ignorance of the possible things, bad things that it could do. But that is a case for regulation. We need to be open our eyes to what may happen. But nonetheless, there are unbelievable opportunities from AI. And in any case, if we don't take it, somebody else will, and we will end up being followers. So my view is we have no choice but to embrace it. I think India will be a huge benefit from it. And I'll give you one example of explaining how. We are an academic institution. Let me show you how academia will be fundamentally changed by AI. Okay, already the case, you can get AI to deliver lectures.
Right.
Okay. And even if you don't want AI to deliver lectures, you can get the best lecturer in the world to do it, and AI will simultaneously translate it to any language you want. Either which way, you can get the very best of any subject out there virtually for free, available to every person who cares about that particular subject. And AI can even answer your questions. So unless it is something that is so cutting edge and new that the knowledge in that field hasn't stabilized, that's a different matter. That happens at PhD level.
Right.
But undergraduate level and maybe even master's level is reasonably standardized knowledge. Okay, 80% at least. That, I'm sorry, does not require regular lectures anymore. Why do you need to spend 4 years in a university listening to something you sit at home and listen to? Not only will AI teach it to you in more interesting ways, it will answer your questions, it will even test you.
Right.
Right? It will certify you out also. So what I'm trying to say is, why do you need 4 years in college to do this? You don't. So therefore, our undergraduate courses, the lecturing part of it, let me tell you, will now get completely automated. It is better done by AI than it is by humans. So universities will have to reinvent themselves to do something else. And I'm arguing that, of course, there is the practical parts that they will have to now rely on. So you will need, so areas like medicine, for example, you'll probably need still, you can't cut a cadaver on AI. But there are lots of things that you, even in medicine, will be able to deliver using AI. Now, why do you need people then 4 years on campus? They can come into campus for a few months every year, do the rest at home, take tests. In fact, I would argue they should work. That's even better than anything else.
On the job learning.
On the job learning. Yeah. And meanwhile, universities can be reoriented to do research and do something else. Now, this allows you to do many things. One is, it means that tertiary education can be made very, very cheap. In fact, for those subjects where you don't need too much practicals and those kinds of things, it can basically be free. Secondly, there'll now no longer be any difference between the best and the worst, because the same AI, because the same thing is running everywhere.
Right.
I can watch AI pull out stuff from around the world's scientific papers. Doing it in Harvard or doing it in Bhatinda is the same. Tick. In addition to that, you can take the test everywhere. You can have testing centers if you don't trust the guy. But,
right.
We can have testing centers. Maybe universities can have some specialized testing centers. But other than that, why do you need that 4-year course? Let them take it. Now, one, it means that I can deliver it free. Two, I can do it at my own speed. I can combine courses however I want. If I want to study English literature and aeronautics together, that's my problem in life. Let me do it. And very importantly, which is something people have to understand, is that it will break the way we get education at all. So today, we have a system where we start at getting educated at 3-4, then career till 24. Okay? 20 years of education, then a few people will do PhDs, most will not. So this is basically the education most people have. And then based on this education, I then survive the next 40 years of working life, 35 or 40 years of working life. But look at how absurd this is, that the person who is the most outdated is the guy who takes the most decisions.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas now, what you will have is that people will learn multiple times along the way. But today's way of education does not allow you to do that. Who's going to take off time for 3 years later in life to come back? It's got kids, it's got all kinds of other things. But with the type of education I'm talking about, everybody at different points in their life will get different degrees. And it's not so difficult that 1 month or something, a year, you come here, spend some time,
Yeah. And everyone will have the same quality Excel.
Yes, everybody has the same quality.
Yeah.
There'll be some at the margin, maybe elite institutions will find something. I mean, networking or something will be beneficial. But by and large, you are making available decent stuff for everybody.
Yeah. So while there might be concerns about jobs being, replaced by AI or something, but still we have a lot of benefit to reap.
Look, AI will get rid of some jobs whether we like it or not. But like any technology, it will also create new jobs. So I don't think that is my fear of AI. After all, when social media and all these things came, it killed a lot of jobs in media. But it also created new jobs. Who thought that social media influencer was going to be a profession? Who thought podcasters would make such a lot of money? Nobody thought. So new opportunities will also come. So I am not concerned about that. My concerns really about technologies like AI is because of their emergent behavior, i.e. they can themselves drive change in directions where humans cannot totally keep track of it. Mm-hmm. And I have some concerns about it because I think if it goes beyond what is easily explainable to humans, and we are a lazy race, so we may then allow it to begin to do things on its own and lose control of it. And this is not because of the movie kind of situation of the Matrix or something where AI is controlling our lives in a explicit conscious way. That too may happen at some further out. But even if it is completely benign, if we do not understand how the system works, it will 100% break down from time to time.
Right.
And it could be catastrophic. So just to give you an example, just 2 months ago, one line of code in some Microsoft vendor's input went wrong.
Yeah.
It shut down banks, it shut down airports, it shut down airlines, it shut down all kinds of things. Now, at least it is a static code. Now, imagine the same thing if we had this situation where
With AI.
with AI.
Yeah. So can we imagine, fundamental AI research like ChatGPT or original ChatGPT being built from tier 2 and tier 3 cities in India? Do you see that?
It could happen. My own sense is that as things stand right now, uh, Indian companies are not at the cutting edge, but there are Indians at the cutting edge of it, not just in the West, even in India. People don't realize much of this AI is being developed by Google and all these guys in their GCC in India. So Indians are at it, but I would like to see Indian companies be at the cutting edge of it. They are not yet. They may get there in the future, but they aren't there yet. And this comes to something else I have long argued for, that Indian private sector unfortunately still doesn't have the risk-taking appetite required to do the R&D needed.
Right.
And we think that government-driven R&D will take the risk. No. Everywhere in the world, the real cutting edge, even in space technology, is now run by private sector. So you've got to, where is our Elon Musk to take all those crazy risks?
Yeah, hopefully the next Elon Musk is coming from ISB.
Hopefully, yes.
So, and being inspired by you to build something basis AI and very emerging sector. So, Mr. Sanyal, to conclude this conversation, we'll have the short game where I'll share a word with you.
Okay.
And if you can share the top thought, a line that comes to your mind on that, right? So, why don't we start with urbanization?
Rapid growth.
Global.
So the reason I'm going to, let me explain this,
Sure.
is that people somehow have this mental image that urbanization is somehow bad. But in fact, you cannot have rapid growth without urbanization. They are synonymous. And so I think we should embrace urbanization. It's a different matter that we should do a better job of it. That's a different debate altogether. But we cannot avoid rapid urbanization if we want rapid growth.
Right. And I think you're talking about building similar cities like we built in Gujarat, multiple cities across the state. Right. Globalization?
Ships. I have always been of the view that maritime countries and civilizations have been more globalized throughout history than landlocked ones. And we are a maritime country. And I personally am a big believer that we should embrace our maritime past more than our landlocked past.
Absolutely. Inclusive growth.
Opportunity. So people have, in my view, a static view of inclusivity. But in fact, the real inclusive growth is creative destruction. That new people arise with talent and risk-taking and other things from below, and they continuously replace the old elite.
Right.
So inclusive growth is not some static, everybody moves up. Inclusivity doesn't come even from equality of income. It comes from this churn. And so for me, opportunity.
And you've led a lot of policy reform. So, right, policy reform.
Process. So a lot of too much emphasis in my view is done to the big structural reforms. So I am a big believer that most of the gains from reform will come from here on, from changing the small pieces that improve the efficiency of the system.
Right. Socioeconomic dynamics.
This I'll link back to my point with opportunity. So socioeconomic dynamics, in my view, is a fluid thing. And again, for me, continuously keeping the elite of the country continuously churning is a very important part of socioeconomic health. So one of the things I keep pointing out, that we went through 45 years of socialism, but with the exception of the Ambanis, all the large business houses in 1947 are the same ones that were there in the early 90s. Okay, so for all of socialism, we actually had the most static, stratified hierarchy there could be, that nothing moved. So for me, the churning part of social dynamics is what interests me. That new people come, old people die away, get replaced, and that's what keeps the society healthy.
Right, absolutely. And lastly, India in the next 5 years.
$7 trillion.
Absolutely, and I think definitely we're looking forward to build a $7 trillion economy together. Right? Thank you so much, Mr. Sana, for joining.
Thank you.